There was blood on the filter room floor, diesel smoke in the air, and something on the other side of the blast door, hitting it hard enough to make the hinges groan. My hands were slick, not with sweat, with Ben's blood. The emergency lights had switched to red 10 minutes earlier, painting the concrete walls in a color that made everything look already dead. The primary ventilation fans were offline. The backup fan was screaming with a metal-on-metal whine that meant it was about to fail too. If that happened, the bunker would start filling with generator exhaust from the maintenance level below. I had built this place to survive the end of the world. 12-inch reinforced concrete, steel blast doors, 2 diesel generators, solar field on the ridge, battery bank the size of a small utility room, deep well, spring-fed cistern, medical bay, hydroponics, dry storage, radio room, enough ammo to fight a small war, and enough freeze-dried food to live underground for a year. None of it mattered, with Ben bleeding out against the wall, an infected beating on the only door standing between us and the rest of the lower level. He was sitting with his back to the filter housing, one hand clamped over the bite high on his thigh, his face drained white under the red light. He had been a sheriff's deputy for 15 years before early retirement and cattle farming turned him into the kind of man who seemed too stubborn to die from anything. But I had seen enough over the last 4 days to know exactly what that bite meant. Ben knew it too. "Don't look at me like that," he said, voice rough. "We're not done yet." The blast door shuttered again. Something moaned on the other side. Then another voice joined it. Then 3 more, a wet chorus, hungry and angry and close. I checked my rifle. 9 rounds in the magazine. 1 spare mag in my plate carrier. Pistol on my hip, with 12 left. The detonator for the shaped charge sat in the cargo pocket of my jeans, heavy as a brick. Ben followed my eyes to the pocket and gave a tight, humorless smile. "You finally gonna blow your dream bunker up?" "If I have to. You always said this place could outlast anything." I glanced up at the fan housing. The whine had climbed another pitch. The whole room vibrated. "Yeah," I said. "Turns out I underestimated people. And tunnels. And you opening doors for me." He laughed once, then winced so hard his eyes watered. Another slam hit the blast door. Steel dust fell from the frame. I pressed my shoulder against the concrete beside the manual wheel lock and listened to the dead on the other side, scraping and throwing themselves forward. Somewhere deeper in the maintenance level, an alarm kept sounding in steady intervals. Fuel line pressure. If the line ruptured, I'd lose generator 2. If I lost generator 2, I'd lose the pumps. If I lost the pumps, the water system went next. My name is Jason Miller. 96 hours earlier, I was standing in my kitchen above this bunker, drinking black coffee, checking battery logs, and thinking that after 5 years of planning, permits, excavation, welding, wiring, and being called paranoid by half the people I knew, I had finally built the safest place in Tennessee. By the end of that first day, I had my brother, his daughter, an ER nurse, a mechanic, a former deputy, and a man I never should have trusted, sealed underground with me. By the end of the 4th day, my brother was dead, Tyler was gone, Ben was bleeding beside me, and the bunker I had dreamed about for years had turned into a concrete coffin with backup power. It started at 6:12 on a Thursday morning. I remember the time because I was in the utility room checking the charge rate on the battery bank when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily Parker. "Something's wrong at the hospital." That was all it said. No good morning. No explanation. Just that. Emily wasn't the type to be dramatic. She'd been an ER nurse in Knoxville for 12 years. Tornadoes, pileups, overdoses, house fires, shootings, meth lab explosions. If Emily texted that something was wrong, it meant normal had already ended. I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring, breathless, background noise loud enough to blur into panic. I heard people shouting. Metal clattering. Something glass breaking. "Emily. Jason, listen to me," she said. "We had 3 violent intake patients before sunrise. High fever, confusion, aggression. Security tried to restrain one, and he bit through a man's cheek. I'm not kidding. Through it. Another one sat up after they called time of death and attacked a resident in trauma 2. I stood very still in the utility room, one hand on the battery rack. You saying drugs? I'm saying I've never seen anything like this. And the police scanner in triage is going insane. Bites. Attacks. People not going down after being shot. From the living room above me, the small television mounted over the stone fireplace was still running morning news. Muffled voices drifted through the open utility room door. Normal voices. Weather. Traffic. Market numbers. Leave, I said. I can't just walk out of. Emily. Silence. Then I heard her breathing change. She knew my tone. We dated years ago before my obsession with preparedness and land and infrastructure and contingency planning wore thin on her. We hadn't worked as a couple, but we still trusted each other in the ways that counted. Where do I go? She asked. My place. Ridge Road Gate. I'm calling Ben. I'll come get you if I have to. A scream ripped through the line. Not close. Somewhere in the background. Then somebody yelling for security. Jason, Emily said, voice suddenly thin. One of them is in the hallway. The call ended. For 1 second, I stood there staring at my phone. Then everything inside me clicked into motion. I ran upstairs into the kitchen, crossed to the mudroom, and pulled open the gun cabinet. AR-15 first, then chest rig, then the Glock I kept in the top shelf. I moved by muscle memory, same way I had moved overseas in another life, when the difference between panic and preparation had been measured in seconds. I was 39, former Army combat engineer. I'd done 2 deployments in Afghanistan, come home with a mild limp in wet weather, and a brain that never fully stopped calculating risk. After the Army, I started an excavation and foundation company outside Knoxville. Good money. Hard work. The kind of work that teaches you how the earth behaves when you cut into it. 5 years earlier, after a tornado ripped through a nearby county and left half a town without power or water for 10 days, I bought 87 wooded acres on a ridge west of Norris Lake and started building what most people called my midlife crisis. I called it common sense. The cabin above ground looked ordinary enough. Stone chimney, metal roof, wraparound porch, big windows facing the valley. But 40 feet beneath it, hidden under a hydraulic pantry lift and a reinforced stairwell, was my real investment. 3,200 square feet of hardened bunker, living quarters, medical room, radio shack, storage, armory, water treatment, mechanical level, escape tunnel to a concrete utility shed halfway down the ravine. Ben Walker knew every inch of it. He was my nearest neighbor, if you could call a man whose cattle fence started half a mile down the ridge a neighbor. Broad shoulders, gray at the temples, hands like shovels. He'd been with the sheriff's office until a line-of-duty knee injury and a divorce made him decide cows were easier than people. We'd become friends the way men in rural Tennessee usually do. Slowly, through shared work, borrowed equipment, and the kind of silences that don't need filling. I called him as I headed for the garage. He answered with one word. Tell me. I think it's starting. No hesitation. You hear traffic? Emily at the hospital. Violent attacks. People coming back after flatline. He exhaled sharply. County dispatch has been blowing up since 5:30. Animal attack calls, domestic violence. Officer needs assistance. Deputies are talking about suspects that keep getting up. I'm going into Knoxville. I'll meet you at the old feed store turnoff. I grabbed my keys and stepped into the garage. My truck sat waiting under fluorescent lights. An F-250 I had spent more money on than I liked to admit. Winch, brush guard, run-flat inserts, 2 auxiliary fuel tanks, off-road tires. It wasn't armored, not really, but it was built to survive more than most. The local news was still pretending the world made sense when I backed down the drive. By the time I reached the county road, that changed. A state trooper's cruiser passed me going the other direction at 90, no siren, only lights. Then an ambulance. Then another. Then a pickup with a shattered windshield, drifting halfway over the center line. I turned the radio on. At first, it was chaos. Overlapping dispatch traffic, voices stepping on each other, clipped locations, half-heard requests, panic buried under procedure. Then one phrase repeated enough times that the rest of the noise blurred around it. Headshots only. I didn't understand it yet. Not fully, but some primitive part of me did. Ben was waiting where the county road narrowed by the old feed store, leaning against his truck with a patrol carbine slung across his chest. He climbed into the passenger seat before I had even fully stopped. "Town's bad," he said. "Knoxville's worse. What's the plan?" "Emily first, then my brother. Luke's in Fountain City with Abby." "Your brother ever answer his phone?" "He did this morning." "Then something really is wrong." I called Luke as we dropped into the highway. He picked up on the first ring. His voice came fast, too loud. "Jason, where are you?" "Shop. Abby's with me." "School locked down. Buses were turning around. There's a pileup on Broadway, and some guy tried to pull a woman out of her car with his teeth." He paused, as if hearing himself say it. "That sounded crazy. Stay inside. Lock the bay doors. Don't let anybody in unless you know them." "I'm coming." "You really think it's that bad?" I looked ahead at the interstate. Traffic had thickened into a jerking stop-and-go line. A FedEx truck sat sideways across 2 lanes. People were out of their cars, some shouting, some running. "Yes," I said. "I think it's worse." St. Mary's East was already unraveling by the time we got there. Police cruisers blocked one entrance. A city bus sat against a retaining wall, with its hazard lights blinking. Smoke drifted from somewhere beyond the emergency department. The ambulance bay doors were half shut and streaked with handprints. Ben took one look and said, "We're not getting in through the front." We circled to the service road. There were people in the parking garage stairwell, pushing, slipping, climbing over each other. A man in scrubs came through the garage door, sprinting, blood all over his chest. Something tackled him before he made 5 steps into the daylight. Ben was out of the truck with his rifle up before I had fully processed what I was seeing. He fired once. The thing on top of the man jerked sideways and rolled. It was a woman in hospital scrubs, blonde hair matted with blood. One shoe missing. She twisted toward us with a movement so wrong it made my stomach clench. Too fast, too hungry. No hesitation, no confusion. Just purpose. Ben shot her in the face. She dropped hard and stayed down. The man beneath her didn't move. "Emily," I shouted. The ambulance bay side door burst open, and she came through at a dead run, duffel bag bouncing against her hip, hair tied back in the same no-nonsense knot she always wore on shift. There was blood on her left sleeve that didn't look like hers. She yanked the passenger side rear door open and climbed in. "Drive." I drove. 2 orderlies hit the back of the truck, screaming for help. One fell. The other vanished under a knot of bodies near the ambulance loading dock. Ben kept his rifle out the window and laid down controlled shots as we punched through a row of plastic traffic barriers and out onto the road. For the first mile, no one spoke. Emily stared straight ahead, breathing hard. Ben watched the mirrors. I drove with both hands welded to the wheel. Finally, Emily said, "It's real." "Tell me," I said. She swallowed once. Patients came in violent, but that wasn't the worst part. People who died from bites or blood loss came back in minutes. Aggressive, confused, no response to pain, no response to chest trauma. Security shot a man 3 times in the sternum. He kept moving until a cop hit him in the head by accident. Ben glanced back. "You sure dead is dead." Emily looked at him. I watched one with no pulse sit up and bite a doctor's throat out. No one had anything to say to that. We got to Luke's HVAC shop at 741. The roll-up doors were down. The front glass was cracked. A white work van sat crooked out front with both rear doors open. One body lay in the lot by the office entrance. Another was face down beside a toppled pallet of ductwork. I killed the engine and leaned on the horn twice, our signal from hunting season. The side man door opened a foot. Luke's face appeared in the gap. He saw me, then Ben, then Emily, and yanked it wider. Abby slipped out behind him before he could stop her and ran for the truck. She was 12, all elbows and dark braid and 2 smart eyes. She hit me hard enough in the chest that my rifle sling dug into my shoulder. "Uncle Jason." I held her for 1 second and then put her in the back seat. Luke was carrying a nail gun in one hand and .38 revolver in the other. "Tell me you've got room." "We've got room." He shut and locked the shop door behind him, like that mattered anymore, and climbed in. As we pulled away, something slammed into the inside of the office window. A man in a stained company polo. One of Luke's employees. I recognized him a half-second too late. His mouth was red from chin to collarbone. He threw himself against the glass again. Abby made a sound from the back seat that she tried very hard to keep from turning into a cry. Luke put one hand over his face. I tried, he said quietly. He got bit at a service call. Didn't tell me. Started shaking around 7. Then he jumped Robbie. Ben didn't say anything. Neither did I. Because that was the moment the final, stupid little hope died. The one that still wanted this to be drugs, or riot madness, or a virus that made people violent but still human. If a bitten man could stand back up in Luke's office and slam himself at the glass with half his throat torn out, then whatever this was had already passed the point where rules applied. We took side roads out of Knoxville. The interstate was done. Too many stalled vehicles, too many abandoned cars, too many people trying to flee at once. Twice we saw attacks in the road ahead. Once, a man in a business shirt ran in circles beside a gas station with 3 infected after him. We did not stop. I can still see him in the mirror. Once, a family waved us down from a minivan in a ditch, while something moved in the back seat behind them. We did not stop for that either. You learn very quickly what kind of person you are in the first day of the end. I learned that I could keep driving. At 8:26, as we climbed onto the county road that led toward the ridge, a black Range Rover cut across from a gravel lane and blocked us bumper to bumper. Ben's rifle was up instantly. The driver's door opened and Cole Harding stepped out. Of all the men on earth I least wanted to see that morning, Cole was near the top. He was 45, local developer money, cufflinks and expensive boots, and the kind of confidence that comes from assuming systems exist to serve you. 2 years earlier, when cash flow on the bunker project got ugly after the blast doors arrived from Ohio 3 months late and twice as expensive, Cole had floated me a private loan and used that leverage to insert himself into a project he never truly understood. He liked saying he had a stake in the bunker. I liked reminding him that he had paperwork, not authority. He was not alone. In the passenger seat sat Owen Price, his private security man. Thick neck, shaved head, hard eyes. Ex-something. Military, maybe. The kind of guy who treated every room like it might attack him first. Owen's left forearm was wrapped in a blood-dark bandage. Cole lifted both hands in mock surrender and smiled like we were running into each other at a tailgate. "Jason," he said. "Looks like you and I had the same idea." I did not get out. I lowered the driver's window 2 inches. "Move the Rover. You really gonna leave me out here?" Ben leaned across me just enough for Cole to see the rifle muzzle. "Move the Rover," he said. Cole's smile faded. "I helped pay for that bunker. You helped write a check," I said. "That's not the same thing." He leaned down toward the cracked window. "Owen and I came from Maryville. We saw what's happening. We heard enough on the scanner to know cities are gone. You built a fortress, Jason. Fine. Congratulations. But you don't get to play king on that ridge while people you know die on the road." Emily was looking past him at Owen's bandaged arm. "How'd he get hurt?" Cole glanced back. "Fence cut." Owen stared at us without speaking. "Show me," Emily said. Cole's jaw tightened. "Not here. Then you're not coming." For a second, I thought Cole might actually pull a gun. Instead, he laughed once, bitter and sharp, walked back to the Rover, and moved it just enough to clear the road. Then he fell in behind us. I considered losing him on the ridge roads, but there were only so many ways up to my property, and Cole knew most of them. He also knew enough about the bunker's existence to become a problem later if he survived, and we didn't take him in now. So I made the decision that would cost us the lower level, Tyler, Luke, and almost everything else. I let him follow us home. The ridge gate was solar-powered steel with a manual deadbolt backup and 6 cameras tied into the bunker network. I hit the opener from the truck, rolled through, and shut it behind the Rover. The gravel drive wound up through cedar and oak to the cabin, which sat quiet and beautiful in the morning light, like the world below it had not already started eating itself. If you had seen it from the porch that day, you would have thought I had won. The cabin looked like a magazine spread for mountain self-sufficiency. Stone, cedar, standing seam roof, rain collection gutters, propane backup, screened porch overlooking miles of trees. Underneath it, hidden in bedrock and compacted clay, lay the thing I was proudest of. We moved fast. Everyone into the mudroom. Weapons clear. No arguments. The entry protocol was something I had rehearsed in theory and never truly believed I would use. Outer cabin secure. Pantry lift down. Interior blast door open. Decon corridor lit. Clothes off into burn barrels. Medical screening in the quarantine bay behind glass. Only after visual and temperature checks did anyone step into the main living level. Cole protested every part of it. Owen protested harder. Emily ignored both and cut Owen's bandage away under bright decon lights. The wound on his forearm was crescent-shaped. Human teeth. Emily looked through the glass at me. No words. She didn't need them. Cole stepped between her and Owen. That's from a fight. Emily didn't blink. That is a bite. Owen finally spoke. His voice sounded like gravel. Man jumped me in a parking deck. Did he have a pulse when he did it? Emily asked. Cole slammed a fist against the glass partition. Enough. Ben stepped closer. Back away from the glass. Owen was sweating now. Skin gray under the fluorescent lights. His pupils too wide. He put one hand on the wall and swayed. I'm fine. He was not fine. I hit the quarantine lock. The steel door to the decon bay sealed automatically with a heavy clunk that echoed down the corridor. Cole whirled toward me. Open it. No. He's not infected. Then he can sit in a clean room for an hour and prove me wrong. Cole came at me fast. Ben stepped between us. One hand on Cole's chest. Rifle in the other. Do not make me solve this. For one dangerous second, all three men froze. Then Owen dropped to his knees behind the glass. Emily backed away from the partition. Abby pressed herself against Luke's side in the corridor. Owen's breathing changed first. Fast. Wet. Then came the convulsions. Hard enough to make his skull knock against the concrete. He tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. Blood leaked from his nose. The wound on his arm had gone black around the edges. Cole turned pale. No. Owen stopped moving. For maybe 10 seconds, there was only the hum of the air handlers and Abby's breathing. Then Owen sat up. Not the way a sick man sits up. Not the way a wounded man tries to rise. He folded at the waist like something being yanked by wires. His eyes were wrong. Clouded. Empty. Hungry. He hit the glass partition with both hands. Emily flinched back. Abby screamed. Owen kept hitting the glass, over and over, jaw snapping, blood stringing from his teeth. Cole stared like his own mind had stopped working. Ben raised the carbine through the security port built into the partition wall and fired one round into Owen's temple. The noise inside the narrow corridor was enormous. Owen dropped. This time he stayed down. Nobody moved for several seconds. Then Luke bent, covered Abby's ears too late, and turned her face into his shirt. Cole looked at the body, then at me, and whatever civilized layer had still existed on the surface of him peeled off right there. You murdered him. No, Emily said. What came back in that room wasn't your man anymore. Cole took a step toward her. I put the Glock in my hand and aimed it at his sternum. That's enough. He looked at the pistol, then at my face. And for the first time since I had known him, he realized I was not interested in winning an argument. He raised his hands and backed up. We dragged Owen's body to the cold storage room off the utility corridor. I wrapped the head in a plastic sheet because Abby shouldn't have had to see that much blood when the door opened later. Ben helped me carry him. He didn't say a word the whole time. When we came back into the main common area, the bunker still felt like a marvel. That was the cruel part. The main level was warm wood and polished concrete instead of bare survival bunker aesthetics. I had fought hard for that during construction. If people were going to live underground, I wanted it to feel like living, not hiding. Recessed lighting. Long steel and maple dining table. Galley kitchen. 6 bunks in one room, 4 in another. Waterfall edge countertops salvaged from a hotel remodel. Ventilation so quiet you only heard it if you listened for it. On the wall opposite the radio desk hung a topographic map of the ridge with every property line, creek bed, logging road, and utility cut marked in pencil and red grease pen. Dream bunker. That's what Luke used to call it whenever he came up for a barbecue. Some guys buy boats, he'd say. My brother buys a mountain and digs himself a Bond villain basement. By noon on day 1, all of us had stopped calling it that out loud. Emily set up the medical room. Luke inventoried food with Abby. Tyler Grant arrived at 12:17, banging on the gate in a diesel service truck with the company logo half torn off the door. Tyler was 32, lean, restless, all nervous movement and mechanical focus. He handled generator maintenance for a regional contractor and had helped me source the second diesel unit and wire the transfer switches. The last time he'd been on the property was 2 weeks earlier, replacing a pressure sensor and complaining about my decision to bury conduit in rock. I nearly didn't let him in. Then I noticed the plastic tub strapped in the passenger seat beside him, full of spare filters, relays, and control boards. He saw where I was looking and said, "If the grid stays down for real, you're gonna want me in the bunker, man." He wasn't wrong. He went through decon, temperature check, visual exam. Clean. Shaken, but clean. By late afternoon, the doors were sealed. Outside the ridge, the world was burning itself down. Inside, 6 of us sat around my table eating canned chili and crackers under warm LED lights, while the radios hissed with the last sounds of organized response. Jason, Ben, Emily, Luke, Abby, Tyler, and Cole, sitting stiff-backed at the end of the table like a man who had been invited to dinner at the house of people he planned to sue later. No one had much appetite. Abby finally broke the silence. "How long do you think this lasts?" Nobody answered at first. Emily looked at me. So did Luke. Because this was my hill, my bunker, my thing. This was the moment all my years of talking about fragility and contingency had been moving toward, and somehow that made me the one everyone expected to sound certain. I set my spoon down. "I don't know," I said. "Could be days. Could be weeks. But this place can hold." Cole laughed quietly into his cup. I turned to him. "You got something to say?" "Just thinking," he said. "You always did enjoy saying 'I told you so' in your own special way." Ben leaned back in his chair. "Pretty sure he's too busy not dying to enjoy anything right now." Cole looked around the room, eyes landing on the concrete ceiling, the supplies, the closed blast door at the far end of the corridor. "What I'm thinking is this. We are underground. Trapped. With limited information, finite diesel, and one way out. That's not safety. That's a siege." Tyler pointed a spoon at him. "Wrong. Safety is layers. Outer gate, cameras, steel doors, independent water, off-grid power. You know how many people in Knoxville would kill for this setup right now. Power isn't independent forever," Cole said. "Nothing is." He wasn't wrong about that either. Every bunker fantasy eventually crashes into logistics. Water must be pumped, filtered, stored. Air must be circulated. Waste must be processed. Fuel must be rationed. Batteries age. Belts snap. Sensors fail. Filters clog. Humans get bored, angry, afraid, and stupid. But day one was too early for me to admit any of that out loud. So I said, "We'll evaluate in the morning. Night underground is strange. You have to choose it. The clocks say one thing. Your body says another. There's no wind through trees, no change in window light, no frog calls from the creek, no truck on a distant road. Only fans, pumps, and the occasional tick of metal cooling." Abby slept in the lower bunk across from Emily's room. Luke sat up with her until she drifted off. Ben took first watch at the security station. I walked the levels twice before midnight, checking seals, checking camera feeds, checking the diesel monitor, checking the hydraulic lift lock, checking the utility level door. All the habits of a man trying to prove that vigilance could substitute for certainty. At 1:14 a.m., I found Cole in the radio room. The bunker's comms corner was my favorite piece of the build. Ham radios, shortwave, weather receiver, signal booster, hard copies of local maps, Faraday cabinet, spare batteries, a backup laptop loaded with offline topo data and county utility schematics. Most people would have called it excessive. Those people were not alive underground on day one. Cole was leaning over the desk, headphones on, one hand spinning the tuner. I shut the door behind me. "You planning to ask?" He slid the headphones down and looked at me in the low blue glow of the equipment. I was listening. With my gear. With survival information, I stepped closer. "You lied about Owen." His eyes hardened. "I lied because if I told you the truth, you would have left us at the gate." "Yes." He looked away for the first time. Not in shame. In calculation. "Owen saved my life in Maryville," he said. "Parking structure. People running. One man tackled me. Owen pulled him off. That's when he got bit. You should have told us. I was trying to get us somewhere safe." I glanced around the radio room, then back at him. Then don't make this harder than it already is. He gave me a flat smile. That depends on whether you start acting like this place belongs to everyone inside it. I left before the conversation could get worse. At 4:30 a.m., County Emergency Management stopped broadcasting. At 5:10, the final state police channel went silent. At 6 o'clock, I woke the bunker and told everyone we were now on ration power, strict watch rotation, and mandatory paired movement on the lower levels. Day 2 began with the illusion that order could still be imposed. We made coffee. That sounds ridiculous now, but it mattered. Emily boiled water. Ben found powdered creamer. Abby wrinkled her nose at instant crystals and drank tea instead. For 10 minutes, the bunker smelled like normal life, and people sat at my table holding warm mugs while the radios muttered static and weather bulletins to no one. Then the maintenance alarm sounded. 3 short beeps. Pause. 3 more. Tyler was already halfway out of his chair. Fuel transfer? He moved toward the wall panel, tapped the display, frowned. Not fuel. Lower sump warning. I stood. Meaning water where there shouldn't be water. The maintenance level was directly below the living level. Concrete corridors, equipment rooms, storage cages, filtration system, battery bank, generator room, water treatment, fuel line manifold, and the service tunnel that ran downslope to the spring house and external utility shed. The lower sump sat at the low end of that tunnel system. If water collected there beyond normal drainage, something outside had changed. I took Tyler, Ben, and Luke with me. Emily stayed with Abby and Cole. The lower level smelled like oil, cold metal, and concrete dust. Clean smells. Controlled smells. The kind I had loved during construction because they meant systems were working. Tyler opened the sump cover. Water had risen 6 inches above normal. Rain? Luke asked. I shook my head. We haven't had any. Tyler aimed his flashlight down the side channel. Something's blocking flow. We followed the tunnel to the spring intake room. The spring house sat halfway down the ravine in a disguised concrete structure that looked from outside like an abandoned utility hut. Water entered through screened intake lines. The room itself had a reinforced exterior hatch and an interior blast shutter I could seal from the bunker. We used it mostly for maintenance access. The inner shutter was closed, but mud streaked the floor in front of it. I crouched and touched it. Still damp. Ben saw it too. You had anybody down here last night? No. Tyler ran his hand along the lower edge of the shutter. Seal's good. No breach. Then how'd mud get inside? No one answered. I checked the camera feed on the wall monitor. Static. Camera's out, I said. Tyler swore under his breath. That's a hardwired line. Ben looked back down the tunnel. So either the line failed at the same time somebody tracked mud to a sealed door, or someone opened it. Luke finished. When we returned to the main level, Cole was eating oatmeal like the morning had not just delivered our first sign that the bunker was already less secure than I'd believed. I told everyone what we found. Cole listened, expression unreadable. Then he said, Maybe the camera failed. Maybe, I said. And maybe somebody with access to this place isn't telling us everything. His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Emily looked between us. Tyler said, That service hatch has an override at the spring house. Anybody get outside, they can work the external latch. If the camera line was cut first, we wouldn't know. Luke crossed his arms. Who knows where the spring house is? I started to answer and stopped, because the real answer was more people than I wanted to admit. My excavation crew during the pour. Tyler. The door installers. 2 electrical subcontractors. Me and Cole, who had insisted on touring the tunnel during construction because, in his words, if I'm putting money in, I want to see where it goes. Cole set the spoon down carefully. You think I've got men roaming around your woods? I think you like contingencies. That's rich coming from you. Ben put both palms on the table. Enough. We either solve the problem or we don't. Jason, what's the move? I looked at the map wall. We lock the inner shutter. Double-check the outer gate cameras. No one goes near the service level alone. Tonight we kill all exterior lights. If somebody's up there, I want them blind. Abby, who had been silent most of the morning, spoke up from the radio desk. I heard something weird around dawn. We all turned. She looked suddenly unsure, which was unusual for her. Abby had inherited all of Luke's stubbornness and none of his need to talk while using it. "On the shortwave," she said. A voice burst. Really quick. Could have been a handheld relay. I only caught part of it. "What part?" I asked. She swallowed. It said, "Harding, respond." Cole's face changed. "Not much. Just enough." I saw it. So did Ben. Luke looked at Cole. "That your people?" Cole leaned back. "I have contractors. Had contractors. Security staff for developments. It doesn't mean anything. It means somebody knew you might be here," I said. He held my gaze. "It means I made plans." Emily's voice was sharp. "Without telling anyone." Cole stood so fast his chair scraped concrete. "I do not owe any of you a confession because I tried not to die." "No," I said. "But you do owe us honesty when hidden plans get people killed inside my bunker." He laughed once, without warmth. "Your bunker. There it is again." He walked out before I could answer. That afternoon, for a few hours, we almost found a rhythm. That was the most dangerous part. Ben and Luke inventoried weapons. 2 ARs, my old Remington 870, Ben's patrol rifle, pistols, plenty of ammunition if the fight was short, not enough if the fight dragged on. Emily organized the med room and quietly told me our antibiotic stock was weaker than I'd thought. Tyler serviced generator 1 and said the load looked stable if we kept consumption low. Abby sat in the radio room logging broadcasts in neat block letters, crossing out channels as they died. I checked external cameras and saw deer moving through the tree line and 2 abandoned vehicles half a mile down the access road. Nothing else. For a little while it felt like the world outside had become abstract, awful, yes, but distant. Managed by steel and systems. Then, just before dusk, the camera at the lower ravine path came back online for exactly 2 seconds. In those 2 seconds, I saw a man in a dark jacket standing beside the springhouse door. Then the feed cut again. We went to full lockdown. No lights above ground. All cabin windows shuttered. Only infrared cameras on the ridgeline. Everyone armed. Cole denied knowing the man. I did not believe him. Around 10 p.m., a storm rolled in from the west. I heard it first through the structure. Not thunder. Wind pressure shifting against the cabin above us. Rain on the metal roof. Then the occasional deep groan of trees moving on the ridge. The bunker handled storms beautifully. That was part of the appeal. Underground, storms made the world feel even farther away. At 10:37, Abby called from the radio room. "Jason." I found her staring at the internal camera monitor for the lower level. Service tunnel feed. The camera had come back on. The picture was grainy, gray, jumping every few seconds as the signal stuttered through damaged line. But it was enough. The inner blast shutter to the springhouse stood open 18 inches, and a human figure was slipping through. From our side. Cole. He had a flashlight in one hand and a pistol in the other. For 1 second, Abby and I just stared. Then I hit the all-call button. "Ben." Lower level. Now. The bunker moved all at once. Ben came out of the armory alcove at a run. Luke from the bunk room. Emily from the med bay. Tyler from the generator room access. Cole's chair in the common area sat empty. I grabbed the rifle by the radio desk and headed down the stairs 2 at a time. The lower corridor lights were still bright then. White LED strips reflecting off concrete. My boots hit every step hard enough to send echoes into the utility level. I heard shouting ahead. Ben's voice. Cole's. Then a metallic bang. By the time I rounded the final landing, the service tunnel was chaos. Cole stood near the open shutter with his pistol aimed into the darkness beyond. Ben was moving left toward a tool cage for cover. Tyler was halfway to the wall control panel. Luke was behind me, breathing hard. Then a figure lurched through the gap in the shutter. Not a stranger. A man in a black security fleece, face torn open from lip to ear. Cole's man. I knew because the fleece had Harding Development Security stitched over the chest. Cole fired twice, center mass. The infected kept coming. Ben put a round through its eye. It dropped, and then 3 more shapes hit the opening behind it. Everything collapsed into noise. Gunfire in a concrete tunnel is not a sound you hear so much as a force that hits your skull from the inside. My first shot took the lead, infected through the cheek, and missed the brain. Ben corrected with a headshot. Tyler reached the control panel and hit the shutter close button. Nothing happened. Manual jam. He yelled. One infected crawled over the first body. Another slammed shoulder first into the wall and came up snarling, rainwater and blood all over its clothes. A third wore what had once been a county utilities jacket. Cole backed up, firing too fast, missing high. "Close it," I shouted. Tyler dropped the panel and ran for the manual wheel. Luke stepped left to cover him. That saved Tyler's life and ruined Luke's. An infected came out of the side maintenance alcove. I hadn't even thought to check. Maybe one that had gotten in earlier and hidden in the shadows. It launched itself toward Tyler. Luke intercepted it with the pry bar he'd grabbed from the stairwell landing. The bar cracked against the thing's jaw. Once. Twice. It still got its teeth into Luke's forearm. He screamed and drove the pry bar through its temple. For half a second, the whole tunnel slowed. Luke looked at his own arm. I saw the bite. He saw me see it. Then Ben shouted more. Tyler got both hands on the manual wheel and hauled it clockwise. The shutter shrieked as it moved. Metal against debris. Something had bent the track. Cole was still yelling now, words broken by panic. My men were supposed to be there. They were supposed to be there. Another infected reached through the narrowing gap. I shot it through the forehead. Ben dropped the next one. Luke, pale but moving, grabbed Tyler's shoulder and helped wrench the wheel around another quarter turn. The opening narrowed to a body width, then less. Then one infected jammed its torso into the gap and clawed forward, pinning the shutter with its own body. Tyler ran at it with a mechanic's hammer and buried the claw end in its eye socket. Ben and I fired together. The body fell clear. Tyler spun the wheel. The shutter slammed shut. Silence did not follow, because the dead on the far side began throwing themselves at the steel immediately. Boom, boom, boom. Steady. Furious. Close. Luke slid down the wall, clutching his arm. Emily reached us seconds later with the trauma kit. One look at Luke's face told her everything. One look at his arm told her the rest. Abby had come halfway down the stairs despite my order to stay put. She saw the blood, saw her father on the ground, and stopped dead. "Dad." Luke tried to smile at her. Broke me a little. "We're okay, Bug," he said, voice shaking so hard the lie barely stood up. Emily cut his sleeve open. The bite was deep. Not scraped deep. Not maybe deep. Teeth-marked flesh, torn muscle, blood flowing under fingers that couldn't possibly press hard enough. Emily didn't look at me at first. She packed gauze, wrapped pressure, checked his pupils. Then she looked up. No hope in her eyes. Only knowledge. We need to isolate him. Abby made a sound I hope I never hear again, as long as I live. Cole took one step back. Ben turned on him like a switch had flipped. "You opened it." Cole's mouth worked once before words came out. "I heard them on the radio. They were supposed to reach the spring house before dark. You opened a sealed hatch during an outbreak because your hired help knocked on the door. They were my people. They were dead people." Ben snapped. Tyler stood there with the bloody hammer in one hand and stared at Cole like he had finally found the shape of a thing he hated. I wanted to shoot him right then. I didn't. That was my second major mistake. We got Luke into the medroom. Emily cleaned the bite because that's what trained hands do, even when the brain knows there is no point. Ben stood watch outside the door. Abby sat beside her father with both hands around one of his, refusing to let go. Tyler checked the lower shutter seals and came back saying the exterior side was taking impacts but holding. Cole locked himself in the far bunk room and refused to open the door when I told him to come out. Around midnight, Tyler found another problem. The dead outside had not only reached the spring house, they had damaged the intake pump junction and torn one of the exposed communication conduits when they piled against the exterior door. Water pressure dropped 7% in an hour. If the lower lines failed completely, my independent deep well would still provide emergency drinking water, but not enough to comfortably run showers, sanitation, hydroponics, and laundry for 6 people over a long timeline. The bunker could hold, but only if the systems held. That night I sat outside the med room and listened to Luke sleep. Every now and then he would wake, ask the time, ask how Abby was doing, ask if I had checked the lower door again. He never asked the real question. Neither did I. Morning on day 3 brought fever. Luke's temperature hit 104.3 by 7 a.m. His skin went gray around the mouth. By 8 o'clock his veins looked dark under the forearm bandage. He stayed lucid longer than Owen had, maybe because the bite was lower, maybe because everyone's timeline differed, maybe because the universe wanted to stretch cruelty out where we could study it. Abby refused to leave him until Emily made her eat. Ben spent the morning rewiring a dead lower camera and saying almost nothing. Tyler pulled panels in the filtration room and muttered about pump loads and fallback valves. Work was how he held himself together. Cole finally emerged around noon. He came into the common area shaved, changed, and wearing one of my spare flannel shirts like he was a guest at a lodge retreat instead of the man who had compromised our only external tunnel. I was cleaning rifles at the table. He stopped 6 feet away. "We need to talk." I kept cleaning. "Then talk." He glanced toward the med room, then lowered his voice. "I made a bad decision. That's one way to put it. You don't understand the situation." I looked up. "Then help me out." He breathed out through his nose, irritated that confession still had to center him. I had 3 men under contract: Owen, Derek, and Paul. When the city started coming apart, I sent them all to fallback properties. Your place was one of them, without telling me, because I knew your answer. Good instinct. His jaw tightened. I got a burst signal yesterday. It sounded like Derek. Said they'd reached the ravine but were being followed. I thought if I opened the spring house, they could get in before whatever was behind them did. And instead, he looked away. And instead they were already infected. Or bitten. Or too close to turning. I don't know. I stood. Chair scraped. You gambled every person in this bunker on a voice burst and a feeling. I was trying to improve our security. No. You were trying to reassert control. His face flushed. This bunker was built on my money too. No, I said quietly. This bunker was built on my land, my labor, my crews, my planning, and years of being called crazy by men like you. You wrote one check when I was desperate, and you've mistaken that ever since for ownership. The silence after that was so total I could hear the circulation pumps 2 rooms away. Cole stared at me. Then he said, "You think you're the only one who saw this coming? You think you're the only one smart enough to prepare? This place exists because people with money and influence understand the world is fragile." I stepped closer. No. This place exists because I knew fragility without needing it explained to me by a developer in Italian boots. Ben came into the doorway behind Cole. Good. Because I was very close to killing the man and justifying it later. Cole saw Ben there, saw the decision on my face, and recalculated. He lifted both hands a little. Fine. You're in charge. Congratulations. But if we stay down here too long, this becomes a trap. He turned and walked away. The part that bothers me now is not that he was wrong. It's that he was right for reasons different than the ones he meant. By the afternoon of day 3, the bunker had started to feel smaller. Not physically. Psychologically. The same walls that had looked comforting on day 1 now looked permanent. Every corridor had angles I knew too well. Every mechanical sound seemed louder. Every closed door suggested secrets behind it. Abby worked the radio because it kept her from listening to her father breathe in the med room. At 3:17 p.m., she caught something live. Not a loop. Not static. A human voice. Repeat any civilian units monitoring. This is Tennessee National Guard Emergency Relay. Avoid major population centers. If you can reach county collection sites, move at first light only. Repeat. The transmission dissolved in crackle before it named the nearest site, but it was enough to change the air in the room. Emily looked at me. Ben looked at the blast door. Tyler took off his grease-stained cap and ran a hand through his hair. Cole, from the far end of the table, said, "You hear that? There are sites. Organized ones. We should move." "With Luke like that?" Emily said. "With infected in the tunnel and probably all over the ridge," Ben added. Cole spread his hands. "Then what's the plan? Sit underground until the filters clog and the diesel turns?" I wanted to say yes, not because it was wise. Because I was stubborn enough to confuse holding ground with winning. Then the lower alarm sounded again. This time it was the filtration fan. Tyler was on his feet before the second beep, bearing temp spike. He and I ran to the mechanical level while Ben stayed with Emily and Abby. The filter room sat beside the generator chamber, behind a steel fire door and two caged storage areas. I had overbuilt it on purpose. Redundant fan assembly, thermal cutoff, manual bypass, charcoal secondary filter. Overkill, everyone had said. Until day 3. Tyler opened the housing panel. The main fan bearing was grinding itself apart. How? He held the flashlight higher. The answer sat in a pile under the intake screen. Mud, leaves, hair, and blood. Material had been drawn into the lower auxiliary line from the springhouse side during the tunnel breach and reached the intake manifold. Not enough to contaminate the air, but enough to imbalance the system. Tyler swore, "I can swap to backup, but if the line clogs farther down, we'll lose pull across the lower level." Do it. He worked fast. Better than fast. Focused. Hands precise even while the world ended around him. I heard something then. Faint. Metallic. Not from the fan. From deeper in the service tunnel. A knock. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. I turned toward the dark corridor. Tyler didn't look up. What? Shut the room. He heard it then too. Knock. 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 Not the wild impacts of the dead. Pattern. Human. Tyler stared at me. Then he whispered, "No way." I stepped into the corridor, rifle up. The service tunnel beyond the inner shutter was dark, but not completely. A faint slice of emergency light bled under the steel edge where the jam track had kept the door from seating fully. Again, 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Cole's people had used that pattern as an internal work signal during construction when the radios glitched underground. I knew because I had complained about it repeatedly. Tyler's mouth had gone dry white. "Derek," he said. Or Paul. Or something wearing enough of them to knock. We did not open the shutter. That decision saved us for about 8 more hours. We backed out of the corridor, sealed the filter room, and went upstairs. Cole listened to my report without blinking. Then he said, "If one of my men is alive out there, I'm not leaving him." Ben stood up so hard his chair nearly flipped. "You're not opening another damn door. It might be a survivor. It might be a corpse with manners." Cole looked at me. "Jason." The room waited. So did the bunker. That was the moment leadership stops being a theory and turns into a blade. "No one opens anything," I said. "Not until daylight. Not until we have camera feed. Not until Luke's situation is resolved, and not until I say so." Cole's face emptied out. Cold. Flat. Done arguing. He went to the bunk room and shut the door. At 7:42 p.m., Luke asked to speak with me alone. Emily met me outside the med room. He knows. I stood there a moment with my hand on the door. Then I went in. Luke was propped against pillows, skin waxy with fever, forearm wrapped thick but leaking through. He smiled when he saw me, which made it worse. Hey. I sat in the chair beside the bed. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "How bad do I look?" "Like hell." "Good, means I still look better than you." I laughed once. It came out broken. He looked toward the closed door. "Abby asleep?" "Emily's got her listening to the radio. She'll be back in a minute." He nodded. Then his eyes locked on mine and the joking part of him was gone. "Don't let her see it." I knew exactly what he meant. My throat closed anyway. "Luke. Don't. I know what's happening." He glanced at his arm. I felt it start around noon. Fever. Ringing in the ears. Weird cold in my teeth. Same thing Owen had. I just got longer. I stared at the blanket. He kept talking because one of us had to. "You were right to build this place." No. That was the word in my head. Not because the bunker was bad. Because if I had been more ruthless, more careful, more willing to turn Cole away at the gate, Luke wouldn't have been lying in my med room, measuring the minutes between life and whatever came after it. Luke shifted painfully and hissed air through his teeth. "Listen to me. Abby needs you. Emily too, probably. Ben will say he doesn't, but Ben needs people almost as much as cows. Tyler," he gave a weak smile. "Tyler mostly needs duct tape and a wrench. I tried to answer. Nothing came out. He reached out with his good hand and gripped my wrist. When the time comes, you do it fast. I closed my eyes. He squeezed once. Jason. I nodded. That was all I had. That night the bunker came apart for good. At 10:11 p.m., Abby found Cole missing. At 10:13, a storage door on the lower level opened on camera. At 10:14, the inner service shutter alarm triggered again. He had taken one of the spare radios, a pistol, and 2 packs from dry storage. I don't know if he planned to run, or meet someone, or open the tunnel again to save whatever was left of his own story. Maybe all 3. I only know what happened next. Ben and I hit the stairs first. Tyler behind us. Emily stayed with Luke and Abby. The lower corridor was dimmer than before because Tyler had routed load away from the damaged fan bank. Red emergency strips now lined the floor edges. We found Cole near the storage cages, dragging a duffel toward the service tunnel. He spun when he heard us, pistol up. Don't. Ben kept walking. Put it down. Cole. The service shutter behind him stood open 2 feet. Beyond it, darkness moved. Not one shape. Several. How many times, I said, rifle steady on his chest, do you have to learn the same lesson? He was sweating, wild-eyed. Derek's alive. No, Ben said. He's not. A hand came through the gap behind Cole and grabbed at his shoulder. He fired backward in panic. Missing. The dead thing shoved harder against the opening. Then another body hit from behind it. Cole turned, stumbled, and one of the duffel straps tangled around his boot. He fell sideways. Ben lunged for the wheel control. I moved to cover him. The first infected through the gap wore half a security fleece and no lower jaw. Derek. Or what had been Derek. I shot him in the forehead. A second infected slammed into the partially open shutter and wedged it wider. Tyler grabbed a Halligan bar from the wall rack and drove the flat end into its neck. Cole was crawling now, scrambling for his pistol. And behind all of that, deeper in the darkness, I heard more footsteps. Wet. Dragging. Too many. Close it, I yelled. Ben spun the wheel. Metal screamed. The shutter moved 3 inches. Then stuck. Cole finally got hold of his pistol and fired from the floor. 1 round hit concrete. Another hit the infected Tyler was wrestling. The thing twisted and sank its teeth into Tyler's throat. Blood sprayed across the wall. Tyler dropped the Halligan and made a sound like a man trying to swallow broken glass. I shot the infected off him. Ben got the wheel moving again. The gap narrowed. Another body jammed into it. Cole scrambled backward, slipping in Tyler's blood. I grabbed Tyler under the shoulders and pulled him clear, even though one look at the wound told me he was already gone. He tried to speak. Couldn't. Blood bubbled through his fingers. Ben hauled on the wheel like he was trying to tear the whole bunker sideways. The shutter crushed the dead thing in the opening, and finally slammed shut hard enough to dent the opposite stop plate. The impacts began immediately from the far side. Ben locked the wheel. I laid Tyler down. His eyes found mine for maybe 1 second. Fear. Apology. Something like disbelief. Then they lost focus. Cole sat against the wall with his mouth hanging open. Ben stood over him, breathing like a bull. Get up. Cole shook his head. Ben hit him once with the rifle stock. Not hard enough to kill, just enough to remind him his body still belonged to consequences. Then Ben looked at Tyler, at the blood, at me, and said the quietest words I have ever heard from him. He's done. I nodded. We did what had to be done. 1 round. Fast. Then we took Cole upstairs and flexed cuffs. He didn't resist. Maybe because he finally understood that, even if I didn't shoot him, the bunker itself had started collecting payment. Emily met us in the corridor outside the medroom. 1 look at Tyler's blood on us and she knew. Abby stood behind her with both hands over her mouth. Then from inside the medroom came the sound of Luke choking. Not on blood. On change. His body had started seizing. Emily ran inside. I followed. Luke's eyes were open too wide. Skin gray. Veins dark. Breath jerking in shallow spasms. Abby started toward him and Emily physically blocked her. Stay back. Luke saw Abby over Emily's shoulder. For 1 impossible second, clarity came back into his face. Bug. She froze. Tears streamed down her face silently. Luke looked at me. And nodded. I don't remember drawing the pistol. I don't remember raising it. I remember Abby screaming my name. I remember Emily grabbing her and turning her away. I remember Luke holding my eyes until the very end, like he was trying to make this easier for me by refusing to look afraid. Then I fired. Afterward, there was a silence so deep it felt geological. I put the pistol on the counter because my hands would not hold it. Abby tore free of Emily and hit my chest with both fists until there was no strength in her. Then she collapsed against me and I held her while she shook. In the common area, Cole Harding sat cuffed to a steel support post and listened to a family break apart because of him. If there is justice in the world, I hope he heard every sound. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, Ben and I carried Luke to cold storage. We wrapped him the way we had wrapped Owen, except cleaner, slower, with more care than the world deserved. Ben did not try to say anything helpful because there was nothing helpful left to say. At 5:40 a.m. on day 4, the lower filter alarm went off. That brings me back to the beginning. Back to the red lights. Back to Ben bleeding beside the wall. Back to the blast door trembling under the impact of dead things Cole had invited to our mountain. When the backup fan screamed again, Ben looked at me and said, "You already know." I did. The lower tunnel could not just be held anymore. It had to be ended. Years earlier, during excavation, I had stored a small crate of shaped demolition charges in a locked cage for rock work along the far retaining cut. Legal, documented, accounted for. The kind of thing an excavation contractor could possess without becoming the subject of a federal file. That crate sat in cage B on the maintenance level, 30 feet beyond the filter room door, on the same side of the corridor as the dead. I checked my watch. 6:03 a.m. upstairs. Emily was with Abby. Cole was restrained. The bunker still had power, but was one mechanical failure away from losing breathable lower-level airflow. If the dead broke through the filter room door, they'd have a direct path to fuel lines, intake controls, and the staircase. No more half measures. "We go now," I said. Ben braced a hand on the wall and forced himself upright. "You go. I cover. You're not walking. I don't need to walk. I need to shoot and be ugly about it." The blast door bucked. The upper hinge screamed. I made the choice. I cracked the door on my side just enough to slip into the corridor and then dogged it behind me. The lower maintenance hall was strobing between red emergency light and the white flicker of a damaged fixture farther down. Bodies lay where we had dropped them over the last 12 hours. Tyler's blood had dried dark on the concrete. The air smelled like hot metal, rot, and diesel. Cage B sat at the far end near the battery room. Between me and it, 6 bodies I could see. Which meant more I couldn't. I moved fast and quiet, rifle up, boots placing careful and deliberate on concrete slick with old water and blood. The first infected came from the generator alcove. A woman in county utility coveralls, scalp half gone, mouth working soundlessly until she saw me. Then the noise started. I shot her once through the eye and caught the body before it hit the floor too hard. Too late. The corridor woke up. Shapes moved in the red dark. 1 from the battery room door. 2 from the pump junction. Another rising from behind a toppled cart I had thought was just a shadow. I ran the last 20 feet to cage B, keyed the lock, yanked the crate free, and turned with the detonator clutched in the other hand. The dead came hard and close. First one took a round through the forehead at 8 feet. Second one hit the cage door before I could fire and grabbed for the rifle barrel. I slammed the stock into its face, shoved, fired point blank into the socket. Third got close enough that I smelled wet earth in its hair. A shotgun blast from behind me took its head apart. Ben. He was in the filter room doorway, pale as paper, using the jam to hold himself upright. "Move." I moved. He backed into the room firing in measured blasts, each one tearing chunks out of the corridor and buying me 3 more steps. We got the crate inside. I sealed the door and dropped the locking bar. The dead hit it at once. Ben slid down the wall. I ripped the charge pack open with shaking hands and started assembling by memory. 2 directional charges on the support seam between the service corridor and pump room bulkhead. 1 on the ceiling beam above the intake manifold. Deck cord linking all 3. Remote initiator. Not elegant. Just enough to collapse the tunnel mouth and bury the service line. Ben watched me work. "How long?" 2 minutes. He nodded once, then looked at the bite in his thigh like it belonged to another man. Then you need to hear this now. I didn't answer. Because I knew. Don't waste one of those minutes arguing with me, he said. The fan screamed again and dropped a note. I placed the last charge. Jason. I looked at him. There are men who become smaller when death gets close. Ben did the opposite. Not physically, spiritually. He had lost blood. He was sweating through his shirt. His right hand shook every time he relaxed it. But his eyes were steady. You go upstairs. You lock the upper mechanical door. You take Emily and Abby. You put a round in Cole if he gives you a reason. Then you wait 10 seconds after the boom and you see if the air system stabilizes. I can drag you. Not with that leg wound. He smiled weakly. Not with my leg wound either. I opened my mouth. He cut me off. I stayed on this ridge because quiet made sense after law work. Cows. Fences. Weather. You can understand all of that if you pay attention. Then this week came along and reminded me that the world's still made mostly of people, and people are always the breach in the wall. You built the wall anyway. Good for you. He shifted, winced, kept going. Now go make sure it holds for the right ones. The right ones. Emily. Abby. Not me. Not him. I hated that he was already speaking from the far side of the math. I handed him the shotgun and the spare shells. He took them. I kept the detonator. Then I did something I had not done since I got back from Afghanistan. I hugged him. Hard. Fast. Real. He grunted. That's enough of that. I laughed once through a throat that wouldn't open all the way. 10 seconds, he said. I went. The lower staircase felt endless. At the top, I sealed the mechanical door and pounded the code into the inner lock so hard I missed once and had to start over. Emily met me in the corridor with her pistol up. Where's Ben? I handed her Abby's shoulder and moved past them to the common area. Cole was still cuffed to the support post. He looked at the detonator in my hand and everything on my face and understood exactly what was about to happen. You can't. I can. Jason, that tunnel is the only alternate egress. It's also the way death keeps knocking. He jerked against the cuffs. You collapse that side, you lose the pump junction. I'd rather lose water pressure than all of us. He looked from me to Emily to Abby and realized nobody in the room was going to save him from me by appealing to reason. Then he did the one thing I never expected. He laughed, low, breathless, almost admiring. You finally figured it out, he said. All your planning, all your systems, all your steel. None of it matters if you let the wrong person through the door. I walked over and unlocked the cuff on his left wrist. He blinked. Then I unlocked the right. Emily stared at me. Abby looked confused. Cole rubbed his wrists, stunned. Why? He asked. Because you're going to help us move water and supplies after the blast, I said. And because if you try anything, Emily gets first shot, I get second, and Abby gets to watch you die on purpose. For the first time in his life, I think Cole Harding believed a promise without needing paperwork. I looked at my watch. 7 seconds had passed. 8, 9, 10. I hit the detonator. The boom was not a movie explosion. It was deeper, heavier, felt through feet and teeth and the hollow spaces inside bone. The bunker lurched once like a giant had kicked it sideways. Dust blew from the stairwell vent. Lights flickered. Somewhere in the lower level, metal screamed, and then stopped. Then came silence. Not complete silence, but the absence of pounding. The absence of the dead. We waited. 1 second, 3, 5. Then the ventilation panel on the wall blinked, recalculated, and stabilized on backup path load. Tyler's reroute held. The bunker exhaled. Emily sat down right where she was standing and started crying without sound. Abby wrapped both arms around her. Cole leaned against the table, face white, and whispered, Jesus. I checked the pressure readouts. Lower pump fault. Water storage adequate. Airflow reduced but functional. Generator 2 still online. No breach alarms on the upper doors. Ben had done it. Or the blast had. Or both. We gave it 30 minutes before opening the upper mechanical lock. The lower stairwell beyond was filled with dust and a smell like pulverized concrete and burnt wire. The mechanical door held. The collapse had sealed the far corridor somewhere beyond the filter room. We could not reach Ben without excavation equipment and daylight and time we no longer had. So we stood at the threshold and knew. Emily put one hand on my back. Abby didn't come down. Cole stayed upstairs. I closed the door and sealed it. That afternoon we held a service in the common area because people deserve witnesses even when you can't bury them properly. Luke, Tyler, Ben. 3 names. Too few words for any of them. Emily spoke first. About Luke fixing her truck brakes once for free because he said people in medicine got enough bills without adding rotors to the pile. About Tyler staying after midnight on a winter storm outage to keep my generator transfer switch from burning up, and then refusing extra pay because he wanted to see if the coffee in my cabin was really as bad as Ben claimed. About Ben teaching Abby how to identify storm clouds by shape instead of app icons because a phone can lie when towers die. When it was my turn, I stood in front of the map wall and looked at the topographic lines of the ridge. I said the truth. That I built the bunker because I was afraid. Not of zombies. Not of some movie ending. Of collapse in all its ordinary forms. Grid failure. Supply chain breakage. Storm damage. Civil unrest. The thinness of convenience. The speed with which normal can become a memory. I said I had mistaken hardening for certainty. I said walls only matter if the people inside them trust one another. I said Ben was right. People are the breach. Cole listened to every word from the edge of the room. He did not look away. We spent the next 2 days salvaging the bunker. Reduced water usage. Full lower-level quarantine. Airflow rerouted to upper circulation only. We moved food from the damaged storage corridor. Emily inventoried meds again. Abby kept the radio watch with a focus that was too old for 12. Cole hauled cases, checked seals, scrubbed blood from concrete without being asked. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe both. On day 6, Abby caught the guard relay again. This time the signal was clearer. Civilian collection point, established at Norris Dam Maintenance Yard. Limited screening. Daylight approach only. Bring water. Bring fuel if able. Repeat. Norris Dam. 24 miles as the crow flew. More like 40 by road if roads still existed in any usable sense. Emily listened with her head bowed. Cole looked at me. You still think staying here is the move? I looked around the common area. At the table where Luke used to crack jokes. At the bunk room Abby no longer liked sleeping in. At the ventilation panel still carrying a yellow fault warning. At the concrete ceiling I had once admired as proof against chaos. No, I said. The bunker had not failed structurally. That made it more dangerous, not less. It was still strong enough to tempt us into staying. But strength is not the same thing as strategy. We had reduced water redundancy, compromised lower systems, no way to fully inspect the collapsed tunnel from inside, and only 3 people I truly trusted. Emily, Abby, and myself. Cole was useful now, even changed in some small genuine way. But I was done betting futures on people I could not completely read. The bunker could still serve one purpose, not as a forever home. As a cache. A place to return to if the road got bad. A buried supply point with steel doors and a memory cost too high to ignore. So we prepared to leave. Cole wanted a vote. I told him no. That surprised him less than it used to. We loaded the truck with what mattered most. Water cans. Medical kits. Antibiotics. Fuel siphons. Radios. Maps. 2 rifles, 1 shotgun, 3 pistols. High-calorie food. Spare filters. Batteries. Luke's old multi-tool that Abby insisted on taking. Ben's binoculars from the security station. Tyler's handwritten maintenance notes, grease-stained and folded into my map case. Before dawn on day 7, I walked the bunker one last time. Cold storage first. I stood there in the dim light and said goodbye to my brother and to the men we had lost getting this place ready for a life we would not live in it. Then the radio room. Then the map wall. Then the lower mechanical lock, still sealed, bent somewhere beyond concrete and collapse and duty. I put my palm against the door and left it there for a while. When I came back to the common area, Abby was already dressed and waiting by the lift. Small backpack, braid tight, eyes red but dry. Emily stood beside her with a trauma bag over one shoulder and a pistol at her hip. Tired, composed, exactly the kind of person I wanted at my back if the world had really become all road and danger. Cole waited near the table with 2 duffels and an expression I couldn't fully place. Regret, maybe. Or the dawning understanding that surviving something terrible does not restore who you were before it. I keyed the main control panel. The upper blast door cycled open. Cold morning air came down the stairwell and touched my face like a memory from another life. Birdsong, too. That almost broke me more than anything else. The world outside had not stopped being beautiful just because it had become lethal. We moved through the cabin carefully. Rifle first. Then Emily and Abby. Then Cole with the second rifle. I cleared every room, even though I knew no one had entered. Habit. Respect. Delay. The porch view hit us all at once. Mist lay in the valley below. The tree line shone wet from the storm. Sunlight touched the far ridge in bands of gold. My truck sat where we had left it, splattered with mud and dried gore, but ready. A perfect morning. The kind of morning that should have belonged to coffee, deer tracks, and weather talk. Instead, I could see smoke columns in the distance where Knoxville used to hum. We loaded up. Before I climbed into the driver's seat, I turned back toward the cabin. You couldn't see the bunker from there. That was part of the design. All that concrete and steel and labor hidden under cedar floors and a pantry lift. I thought about the first time I'd stood in the excavated hole before the slab pour, looking down at rebar and forms and stone walls cut into the ridge, and feeling proud in a way that had almost been joy. I bought that bunker because I believed survival was a place. A location. A structure. A set of barriers between me and the collapse. I was wrong. Survival was people. It was who you let in. Who you trusted. Who you were willing to carry. Who you were willing to lose without letting the loss turn you into the next threat in the room. It was movement when movement mattered, and staying put only when staying put served a purpose. It was knowing when a fortress becomes a tomb. I locked the cabin. Not because I thought locks mattered much anymore. Because rituals still did. Then I got in the truck. Abby climbed into the back with the radio headset around her neck. Emily took the passenger seat and unfolded the county map over her knees. Cole sat in the rear with the shotgun laid across his lap, quieter than I had ever known him. I started the engine. As we rolled toward the gate, the ridge cameras flashed green across the monitor, and the steel barrier slid open on its solar hinges. The road beyond dropped through wet trees toward a world full of dead things and desperate people, and one possible collection point at a dam where the guard might still be holding a line. Not safety. Not really. Just the next objective. Abby looked out the rear window as the cabin disappeared behind us. Do you think we'll come back? I looked once in the mirror at the ridge, at the trees, at the place I had once believed could save us all by itself. Maybe, I said, but not to hide. The gate closed behind us. And for the first time since day one, leaving the bunker did not feel like failure. It felt like understanding.